We can start. Okay, thank you very much for being here with us. This is one of the last smart discussions we are having this year. It's almost the 90th smart discussion since 3 years ago, when in the pandemic we decided to create this very interesting space of discussion. We have already, for Teresa, knowing lots of people from different countries, different topics, different subjects. And today we have the possibility of having with us Teresa Payton, that was some years ago the CIO of the White House, but is considered one of the most influential and one of the most expert women in the world in cybersecurity, in digital, things like that. We met some months ago with Antonio in a very big event that IDC organizes every year in Portugal, and it was very interesting to have this possibility of you being with us and with this community of managers, specialists in IT, and people from that. Thank you very much, Teresa, for your time. I think all we will appreciate that. And Antonio is well known for most of us and for most of you. He's a person that has a career in the public sector, in the Navy, and some years ago he is the director for the National Security Office and also for the Cybersecurity Office. And I think he's the right person to complement the discussion with Teresa. So Teresa, the floor is yours. You have already 15, 20 minutes. Then we pass to Antonio, and then we have the discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for inviting me to join you. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I'll keep my remarks brief because I want to make sure we have plenty of time to also hear from Antonio and then from you, your questions. And we can certainly cover things that I'm not covering here. I just thought it would be great to just sort of kick it off with some thoughts. And, so for starters, it is estimated by a lot of different research firms. One in particular that I use is Cybercrime Magazine, that the world has spent over the last 5 years about $1 trillion trying to fight cybercrime. So proactive measures to fight cybercrime. But it's estimated that the cost and the losses associated with cybercrime in the next year could actually hit $6 trillion. So I ask you, if you're spending this kind of money over the course of years and you're still losing this amount of money, you have to ask yourself, obviously we're doing a few things right, but we're probably still doing a lot of things the wrong way. And so I want to throw out the idea to everybody that the reason why we're still missing is because we're not focused on human-centered design. If you think about strong passwords, that doesn't feel like human-centered design. It's absolutely necessary given where we are in our current maturity of how we lock things down, but it makes it very hard from a usability standpoint for most users that are not technically savvy, and bad things are still happening. So I want to give you a couple statistics to think about, and then we'll come back to that human-centered design idea, and then I'll turn it over to Antonio. So I wanted to give you a few other statistics. For starters, in the last 18 months, roughly 80% of all reported cybercrimes are generally attributed to social engineering and very specifically phishing attacks. So again, kind of that playing on that theme of we need to think better about our designs and making sure they're human-centered. Roughly 33 billion accounts will most likely be breached by the end of December of this year. So if you convert that to a calendar, that's about 2,328 accounts being breached per day, or 97 cybercrime victims per hour. That, to me, when you look at those numbers, it's pretty staggering. Layer into that artificial intelligence. So I want to talk about the downsides briefly, and then we'll talk about the upside of how artificial intelligence will make a difference in fighting fraud and fighting cybercrime. So we're already seeing where artificial intelligence is assisting cyber criminals in generating malware very rapidly. They're using it to automate attacks, and it is enhancing the effectiveness of their scams. If any of you have tried out generative AI and have used translation capabilities of AI, not only can you say, can you please translate this from English to Portuguese or English to Spanish? But you could also say, what I'd like you to do is, so let's say you were translating something from Portuguese to English, and you could say, do it in American English because we speak very differently than people from the UK. And by the way, I'm reaching out to people in Texas. So can you speak like American English, somebody from Texas, and emulate Matthew McConaughey and President George W. Bush when you create your response for me? And generative AI will do it, and it will emulate that. So when you think about the power of that in the hands of a fraudster and a cyber criminal or a nation state who is trying to conduct social engineering, they're advancing their capabilities to have convincing social engineering at a speed and scale we've never seen before, at least not in the history of my working career. So they're generating malware, generating scams, they're more effective, they're automating attacks. And they can clean up the language and make things much more convincing. They can use deep fake technology to make logos look great and not pixelated, to do voice cloning. I just did a voice cloning demonstration last week. I met with the captive insurance agencies from around the world that met in Grand Cayman last week. And I trained a free tool. I uploaded a recording of my voice that was 30 seconds. And it was not a very high fidelity recording of my voice. And then using one passive training on a free voice cloning tool, made my voice say something I've never said. And it said it with my pronunciation of English and my pace and my intonations. Pretty incredible. Okay, so now how can AI help us, help you, help me, the good people who are trying to fight cybercrime and fight fraudsters and nation states? One, AI is already helping us sift through data patterns, recognizing complex data patterns and anomalies that may indicate either you're under attack or there's been some type of a cyber incident or a cyber breach. Some other things that kind of in the early stages of using it is doing breach risk predictive modeling. Here are the areas where you most likely will be under attack and most likely might have the most issues. Some of it just confirms what you already know, being in the profession, a gut check, but some of it can be very great predictive modeling. AI in the hands of good, hardworking people is helping with malware detection and prevention. It is helping with creating user authentication profiles that you can match the digital behavior against a profile. It is helping already with spam filtering, password protection, bot identification, and behavioral analysis. I do want to caution everybody, though, that generative AI is not mature enough yet to really replace human experts in cybersecurity or human experts in security operations centers or human experts who are looking for anomalies. Right now, it is just speed. It's a great augmentation, and it's a great way to spot check and double check where you have teams that are stretched thin. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Antonio for his thoughts. And I'll just, again, leave you with, if we can focus on human-centered design, thinking about your customer, your third-party vendor, your employee, and why are they interacting with technology? What were they doing before they interacted with the technology? What are they going to do next after they walk away from the technology? If we can focus on that design, then we can build security in around them, leveraging these innovative, creative tools and solutions. And at the same time, outthink, outsmart, and outdesign nation states, cyber criminals, and fraudsters. Over to you, Antonio.
Okay, Antonio, now the floor is yours, and then we will develop a discussion between all the participants. We have here very interesting people that are keen with this topic. Antonio, please.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Jaime. I'll begin by saying that in the beginning of this year here in Lisbon, I've listened to a very inspiring conversation or conference held by a professor of Miami Law School. The name is Professor Weldon. She's a lady. And she spoke about something that I never thought about, which was the development of technology with human rights by default. And then she explained what she meant about it. And she was so interesting that since February, she came over to Lisbon 3 times. Because we invited her, and the last time she came to the Lisbon Law School on a conference that was held to question the need for a new constitution based on human rights on the development of technology. So it was really something that was, at least for me, that I'm not a lawyer, mind-blowing. And I really listened to her, and of course she spoke about that specific aspect concerning artificial intelligence, and her thoughts are quite interesting. The name is Nadine Weldon. She's a professor in the law school, Miami Law School. But to tell you that if Jaime wants me to speak about the challenges that we have not only in this country but also in Europe, because we are a member state of the European Union, I would start by saying that I really agree with what Teresa is talking about on the human centricity of what we have to do, because sometimes what I find is that people tend to have a very technical language and to talk for their own community, when cybersecurity is looked at least in this country, as a whole of government, whole of society approach. So we have to have different ways of speaking the Portuguese language as a function of the group we are aiming to reach. So if it is the youngsters, we have to do it in a certain way. If we're looking at to reach the elderly, we must speak in another way. The campaigns must be different. We have now a campaign ongoing with 21 small 2-minute movies that are being published every week, aligned with Christmas, for instance, where people buys a lot of things online, and the fraud is skyrocketing, and we have to tell them what to do and what not to do in order for them not to fall on fraud schemes. But this is basically, and above all, our main challenge. The main challenge is to really create strong awareness and knowledge in the society in order for us to have a resilient society as far as the digital world is concerned. And but of course we want to be more ambitious as far as that reach is concerned, and that's the reason why we have established a network with the 21 universities and polytechnics institute of this country, and where we are going to fund courses, 35 hours, a multiple of 35 hours courses inspired in Sun's academic courses, and they are meant to produce by the end of the first semester of 2026 9,800 professional cybersecurity professionals in the country. And we are also developing a network of 7 cybersecurity competence centers spread around the country, 5 in the Portugal continent and 1 in each island, where these centers will be the proxy of the National Cybersecurity Center to implement solutions that are adapted to the reality, to the social economical reality of that region. This is a way of us reaching out the real needs of the citizens of Portugal and the agents of the economy, regardless of the place where they are in the country. This is something that we are deploying as we speak. The first one is much more mature, the C Academy, its name. The C Network is in the final stages of contracting the services. But I would like also for this community to talk about a very challenging thing that we have at hand, which is the implementation of the NIS2 directive. I'm sure that Teresa has already heard about it. It's a directive from the EU, that is the Network and Information System Directive number 2. It has already a number 1 that has been applied to the Portuguese law in 2018. Now the NIS2 is much more demanding. The scope is much wider, and we should be able to put it in our own law by the 17th of October of 2024. It seems like a long time to go, but it is not, because since it is a law, it has to go to the parliament. And in order for a law to go to the parliament, an active parliament must be in place, which will not occur in the near future, unfortunately. At least that unfortunately is just my opinion and only my opinion. But this new directive will get much higher the requirements of cybersecurity for companies and also public administration, where the C-level of those companies will be accountable both at court and financially if the company doesn't comply with the minimum requirements that the law establishes. And this law is common for all EU member states. Of course, there will be a time for companies to adapt. The more mature ones will have no problem on adapting to it, but the majority of those that will have to comply must have a time to adapt and funds to adapt. And I think it's going to be quite a long path. But it's a path that must be followed. Otherwise, the society will be even more with even less resilient to the cyber attacks that are there every single day, and even more sophisticated, and also with a kind of a company type of approach. We can buy attacks, we can deploy attacks. Very recently, we knew about a situation where the attacker said that if the company doesn't pay the ransom, they will go to the GDPR authority in the country, telling them that they have leaked very important personal data, and they would be fined by the GDPR authority in the country, which would be even more money than the ransom they were asking for. So it's kind of an awkward world in which we are living in, not only in the physical world, but also in the cyber world. So basically, Jaime, the two big challenges we have is to deploy the two initiatives that are meant to raise the level of maturity of cybersecurity in the society of this country. And the second most challenging thing we have is to incorporate in our law the NIS2 directive, and also follow very attentively the deployment of those requirements within our society. And I'll stop now.
Okay, thank you very much, Antonio. I think it was a very interesting talk from Teresa and from you. And now we have here lots of people that are very interested and interesting with this topic. And I hope that we can have a good discussion. Okay, I will start by José Tribolé. Is here with us. He's a well-known teacher and expert on ICT and digital. José Tribolé, do you want to make some questions, some comment? It's always a pleasure to have you with us.
Yes, good afternoon to all. I have specifically a challenge to Teresa, naturally, which is the following. You mentioned the human-centered attention that we must give to these all these areas of cyber, and I fully agree, because humans have two things that are critical. One is the capability of understanding the context and the consequences of actions, while at the same time they are able to act. So they are truly agents in the informatics sense, autonomous agents, supposedly intelligent. To provide defense to a given social organization, we probably should go back and review how in the physical spaces, in the many thousands of years we have as a society, we learned to provide defenses, active and passive. And it was not only by preparing humans to defend themselves individually, or even in platoons collectively, but by providing capabilities, either passive or active, in the surrounding, in the environment we have. We have castles, and I was yesterday seeing a wonderful program about castles in England and the evolution of square-type castles, rectangular castles, to circular defenses, and why this was happening, and so forth. And also we have active defenses. We have traps, we have things that can actively defend us. Now, when we think about the cyberspace, we somehow are only concentrated on humans, and then the software agents, the functionalities, and now, of course, with AI, it's become more powerful. Somehow we're not thinking about what exists in cyberspace, how cyberspace should be structured and organized so that the assets in cyberspace have self-defense capabilities, in particular information. If we structure information around the things that really exist and have attributes that are intrinsic, and then provide them with capability to actively defend themselves against attempts to violate their rights, as Antonio Gamber Marx was saying about this Florida professor about the human rights, but in the cyberspace, about the rights of the things that we have in the cyberspace to be preserved and to be the first line of defense. In other words, I claim we are not paying attention to the need to structure information in the cyberspace to have self-defense capabilities, distributed capabilities, together with human organization. Somehow I feel that no one is paying attention to the information. What do you think about this? Okay.
Teresa, don't you mind we organize groups of 3 questions, okay? So I think it's better for the discussion. Okay, I don't know if, Ana Paula Reis, you are a startup and a very entrepreneurial active. Do you want to make some questions to Teresa or to Antonio?
Yes, I have a very simple question. How do you cope with dystopic reality, which is we're trying to do local, regional laws and directives versus an issue that is global and which main players don't play under the same rules.
Okay.
Thank you.
And finally, Carlos Vaz, you are also a person very committed with that digital. Do you want to make some questions, some topic?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Jaime. Well, my question is really simple. It's the opportunities and impacts that artificial intelligence will bring to cybersecurity. I had the opportunity to hear Teresa when she was here in Portugal, and she talked a little bit about this topic, which I consider it can be a huge opportunity and also a huge threat. So just talk a little bit about this artificial intelligence and cybersecurity opportunities and threats. Okay.
Okay. So we have already 3 questions and 3 topics. Teresa and then Antonio. Okay. You may answer now, please. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So can we, Anna, can you give me your question one more time? I just want to make sure I address all 3.
My
And
question
about-
is around us, particularly in Europe, doing laws that apply regionally and locally. And it's like having a big bucket where we put water, but we have a huge hole that is bigger than the bucket, sort of. So how
Yeah.
do we handle that?
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
So on the first topic, I agree with you that, so if you think about how the internet kind of was originated and born and evolved, it was connecting academic institutions to each other, government research projects. And so if you think about its origin story, the internet was very much about how do we collaborate and share openly. And then we put commerce on top of it, and sensitive and confidential types of transactions now happen on something where the origin story was collaboration, academic thinking, and sharing. So I agree with you. I think we have to think differently about how data is created. We should assume that somebody's always going to try to steal it, like it's treasure, to use your analogy around the castles, that somebody's going to come after. So how do we not only protect the treasure by putting, you know, booby traps around it and different defenses and offenses around it, but then if in fact somebody, quote, picks up the treasure, what does the treasure itself do? You know, does it lock itself up? Does it, you know, self-destruct? What does it do? Does it call home and alert somebody, help, I've been taken? So I agree with you. I think we've got to change our offensive and defensive design thinking to assume everything is going to potentially be under attack, potentially taken, potentially tampered with. And if we think that way, how would we design access, usage, storage? I think we would design things differently. As it relates to kind of the patchwork quilt of laws and solutions and governance that you brought up, Anna, when I think about that, I do believe that we have to have more international accords. And so we have to take each piece, whether it's ethics in artificial intelligence, ethics in quantum computing, impact of quantum computing on the environment, you know, these different technologies. We do need more international accords, not just for sort of treatment and ethics, but also when crimes are committed and it's time to hold people accountable to really truly be able to do that. Because today, if you commit the crime in your own country and you get caught by your own country, then you probably will see a court trial and probably will have to pay damages or go to jail. But if you do it internationally, because of our lack of international accords, international governance, there's not an easy way to seek justice and deter the attacks from happening. It's very hard to do deterrence if somebody says, likely I won't get caught, and even if I do, they can't get me. So there needs to be more international accords, collaboration, cooperation, and sharing of best practices on that. And then kind of my last comments around AI and cybersecurity. I do think we are at a very unique, and I have great optimism for how we can leverage generative AI. You know, I could even see us on kind of the good person side of the fight, using deepfake technology to create decoys that could potentially lure cyber criminals in, back to kind of your castle idea, creating decoys where it's something very attractive to cyber criminals and nation states and fraudsters. And then when they go after the decoy, now we learn who they are, what their tactics were, how they came about doing what they're doing, and then leverage AI to basically look at that behavior, profile that behavior. So if we see it in other places, we know that it's anomalous behavior and shouldn't be allowed. So I do see where there's really great opportunity right now with AI to make the human-centered design a lot more seamless, a lot easier to use, a lot more secure, and to be able to do some of those kind of proactive defense and offense maneuvers that we aren't able to do with today's technology.
Okay, Antonio, what do you want to see?
I may. I'll address the question from Ana Paula Reis and then from Carlos Vaz. As far as the global laws for cybersecurity, there's already a long path in United Nations for a creation of a kind of Montego Bay, which is the law of the sea type of thing for cybersecurity. The Minister of Foreign Affairs in Portugal are the ones that are representing Portugal in that fora. But there are fundamental differences in democratic countries with respect to non-democratic countries. In democratic countries, the rule of law, the human rights, the privacy aspects must be taken into account. While in the non-democratic countries, which are unfortunately the majority of the countries in the world, this doesn't apply. In non-democratic countries, technology is used to be the big brother of all citizens of the country. So there are some commonalities that can be achieved, but the fundamentals cannot. Having said that, the committees are still ongoing, and this is the fact. But I would not fully agree with you when you say that European Union is doing laws, directives, regulations for 27 for the European Union countries, member states. The fact is that when we do that, we somehow indirectly oblige other countries to comply with when they want to establish themselves in Europe or sell or commercialize goods that are produced outside Europe. So it's a way indirectly of regaining some sovereignty, digital sovereignty in the world. Look at what happened with the GDPR. There are countries in the world that have adopted a similar rules. There are even states in the United States of America, like California, for instance, that has applied at the federal level those rules. So I think it's much better than do it on its own, Portugal and then Spain and then France and Germany and so on and so forth. Quite honestly, I would wish that EU could even go further in things that are IT related, but touch national security, but that is not yet the case. But that's the way it is. United Nations is pursuing, but I quite honestly don't believe they will reach the level at which we would all hope for, and With that, I fully agree with you. But the fact that the European Union is doing what European Union is doing for the bloc of the European Union is much better than what would happen if each country would have to do it on its own. As far as AI is concerned and cybersecurity, first, I think it will help the cybersecurity professionals a lot. There are some big tech companies that are already deploying some solutions that are assisting cybersecurity professionals on preventing attacks, or at least on anticipating attacks, because the knowledge that exists is already enough for us to do some prediction. There is already artificial intelligence to go through logs that produce millions of lines per minute, that only a good artificial intelligence mechanism can go ahead and make sense out of those logs. But I'm sure that we are still very far away from a stable situation. I can share with you my fear in the future. My fear in the future can, as far as the usage of cybersecurity for the good is concerned, it can be described with a parallel of cars. We all remember cars that didn't have any parking assistance mechanisms, and we could park the cars without bumping into the rear car, or without bumping. We knew what to do to park the car correctly. Now cars all have cameras and sensors that beep when we are close to the other car. And when I rent a car that doesn't have anything of that kind, sometimes I stop when I bump into the other car. What does that do? What does that to do with cybersecurity? Well, if the cybersecurity professionals began having co-pilots that do a lot on behalf of them, they will lose skills. They will rely too much on the machine. And if they rely too much on the machine, they tend to believe too much on the machine. And if the machine suddenly is not there, they are on their own. And if they are dealing with critical things must always be remembered how to do them in the old-fashioned way. And I'm a naval officer, and we keep on teaching sailors how to calculate their position in the middle of the ocean without GPS or Galileo or any electronics means, because we don't control those, and if they fail, they have to know how to do the basics without technology.
Okay, we go now for a second round of questions. We will try to close not very far, because of course tomorrow it will be holiday. Orlando Monteiro Silva, I think you want to make a question, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, my question is to Teresa. I still remember, and I think we all do this statement of that in the 2016 elections, with this Cambridge Analytica CEO that posted something like he had put Trump in the White House. And my question would be, with your, let's say, experience, if you think that generative technology, which can be very accurate in terms of micro-targeting of the electors, if this technology could be used in a let's say in a positive way, because meaning if you think that not using this technology would be leaving to others that possibility. So what do you think about this micro-targeting at for instance, in the next US elections?
Okay.
Thank you.
Now I will challenge Paulo Muniz, that is expert on AI, ICT, digital in one of the most big companies here in Portugal, EDP. Paulo, do you want to make some comment or some question?
Hello, I'm sorry because to be honest, I'm dividing my attention because I
No
have
problem,
another
no problem, no problem.
I listened to another meeting in Brazil
No
with my
problem.
team in Brazil. But yes, but I was kind of dividing my attention, so it's like my feminine side, and I think I have divided my attention. And I just want to point out one thing: is the question of regulation. Okay, so we have right now a landscape that is regulation everywhere, fragmented, sometimes conflictual, and my concern, and I operate, as you know, my company operates critical infrastructures and essential services over all the world, in the United States inclusive. And my question or my comment and the following question is that if I care too much about regulation and thinking about something that I heard in Microsoft in Tel Aviv maybe 2 months ago, where I was in a conference. If we care too much about checking box regulation, so I do this, I do that, and the attackers thinks in graphs. Well, they are organizations, but they don't have to comply with audits and regulation and things like that. So they are more flexible. I think if we are not running this risk of caring only about regulation and forgetting the real cyber risk. That is my comments and the following question. Thank you, Jaime. I'm sorry,
yes.
and I'm sorry because I'm really doing an effort
No
to
problem,
be in
no
2 times
problem.
at the same
We
time.
know-
but
we
I
know
was
that
with attention.
Things,
Thank you.
things are very dynamic today, no problem.
Thanks.
And now to close this second round of three questions, Sandra Fazenda de Almeida, you are the manager of the Portuguese Association for Digital and Communications and things like that. Do you want to make some question, some comment? Sandra, I don't know if you are here. Sandra,
Hi, Jaime. I'm here, but I'm not. I'm doing several things at the same time.
yes, but you want to make some comment, some question to Teresa or to Antonio?
No, I only came. I didn't hear the first Teresa speaking, just Antonio, and I found quite interesting the mixture, the partnership. Antonio said that we need to do with artificial intelligence and the people that can navigate without technology. And I think it's also the way, but I don't want to make any question. Thank you very much, Jaime.
So I will challenge Luis Alves Souza, that is a friend that has lots of years of experience in tourism. And we were speaking with Teresa about the interest that Americans are having with tourism in Portugal. What do you have to say about that, Luis? Do you have cybersecurity problems in your hotel, in tourism? What do you think?
Já não estou muito em condições de falar, desculpa.
You cannot speak today? Okay, you are with Retesh, I understand. So, Teresa, we are going to answer these two questions, and now if it is possible, go to a final round, please.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'll just say, I've been to Portugal twice. I absolutely love it. So I'll just comment, I could see why Americans are moving to Portugal. It's absolutely lovely. But to go back to the first question, so you may be familiar, I actually wrote a book on misinformation, disinformation campaigns, and how they had a global impact on social discourse and elections. And so I've thought about this a lot. I just wrote a second edition of that book, which will come out next year. And as it relates to micro-targeting for good, I'm going to kind of paraphrase what you were saying there. I think there can be a great way to get public service announcements out to people so that when they are electing, this is for global elections, that they can get the information and spot and stop misinformation and make their own decisions for themselves without being manipulated. Now, propaganda and manipulation campaigns have been around since there were two people walking on the earth. So I think, you know, the idea that we can get rid of all manipulation schemes is, you know, a little too optimistic. But what I do believe we can do with micro-targeting is look at different demographics and then look for those opportunities where we can educate and make sure the facts are getting to each demographic where they are. You know, so for an example, the demographic that's, you know, kind of more senior in years, that demographic tends to listen to the news, watch the news, read the news. So reaching them where they are. The younger demographic, the Gen Z, they tend to get a lot of their news from TikTok and WhatsApp and WeChat and other different types of social media platforms, YouTube Shorts. And so the opportunity to micro-target them with facts, with figures, so they can make the decision that's best for them and voting on the issues and matters that matter most to them with the facts is how this needs to be done. And so we do have to think differently. Campaigns need to think differently, but how we deliver facts and figures to the voting population on all social issues and elections has to evolve and change. And micro-targeting could actually be a good thing in doing that the right way. And then on the second question, that really resonated with me personally, because I've said a lot of times, compliance checklists, regulatory frameworks are sometimes the worst thing that ever happened to cybersecurity, because you're right. It sort of gives the impression, the false impression, that if I do everything on this checklist, I'm good. And it gives almost the false impression to a board of directors or to the chief level suite of executives that cybersecurity is a destination. Once I'm green on the scorecard, once I've checked all the boxes, I've made it and I get to stay here. Whereas, you know, really what cybersecurity is, it's a lifestyle choice, just like being fit and being healthy is a lifestyle choice. You don't just achieve a level of fitness and sit back. You know, I love, in America, we call it soccer, you call it football. You know, the best athletes in the world, they don't see being a fit and fabulous athlete as a destination. You rest there. They're constantly innovating. They're constantly changing things. They're constantly improving. And that's what cybersecurity needs to be. Now, having said that, everybody needs to start somewhere. So I think we need to really explain regulatory frameworks and compliance checklists as just like the safety checklist you do on your vehicle. You use the automobile was, you know, kind of used as an example. You have the seatbelt, you have the horn, now you've got the parking sensors and aids. We also need to have sort of that minimum level of safety and security features. That's what compliance checklists are, but they do not create a destination of absolute security. So that would be my commentary there. It's good to have them, but it also gives a false sense of security.
Yes, now Antonio, do you want to make some comment, please?
Yes, please. As far as the first part is concerned, I said in the beginning that we approach cybersecurity as a whole of society, all of government approach. So, having said that, the achievement of a certain end state or a higher maturity state for the society must be accomplished through the usage of several tools. Not only a specific tool, but several tools that are used as a cocktail, a good cocktail, depending and adaptable to the target. And of course, as far as, and I fully concur with Teresa when she said that we have to have some different vocabulary, different ways of speaking to different targets of people. But one thing I think we have to do, not only in this country but also in like-minded countries, is to cherish the critical thinking of our youngsters, the critical thinking of our society, instead of promoting the acceptance of everything they look at and everything they listen to, be it in TikTok, Facebook, strange TV channels. They have to have some means of questioning that and asking, is this really true? Let me check in another source of information. And that's where I think, once again, AI can be of a lot of benefit, because through AI, good AI, regulated AI, AI can help us on on choosing what is the real thing, what is the proper, a fundamental truth, or something that is misinformation. So as far as regulation is concerned, Paulo asked it. I think once again, regulation is one of the tools, and we have to begin by something. And if you have nothing, at least you have a checklist, and from then on you can improve on that. But of course, it's like creating a capability. You have to have doctrine, and checklists give you the doctrine, because doctrine gives you the what to do. Policy gives you what should be done, and the doctrine gives you how should you do it. And then you have to have people that is knowledgeable, not only knowledgeable in cybersecurity, but as a mind, a culture change. Cybersecurity must be in our cultural approach, because you have digital all over the place. Now, if you have digital all over the place, you have to know how to use digital in a way that doesn't hamper your fundamental rights. So it's a mixture of several things that we here in this country teach, create awareness, and that's the scope and the principles that guide us on improving our society level of cybersecurity.
Okay, so I'm going to the final round of questions. First, we start by the ladies. Paul, you don't mind. So, Catarina, it's a pleasure to have you with us. So, please make your question, and then we have Paul, and then we close, okay? Paul again.
Thank you, Jaime. So this topic is very interesting for the area where I work. I work in neuroscience, and I try to apply neuroscience in consumption and to help brands to understand better the behavior of the consumer. And this is a very interesting topic, because our main concern, of course, is to protect the data that we collect in a lab. So we try to find and understand the brain and how do we work as a human. And this is, of course, is data that we don't have in our conscious way. So we need to use methodology and technology to understand better how the brain works. And of course, this data is or should be very well protected, because, well, this is data that is very private. And here is a concern that we have in the laboratory, also because we find some ways to protect the data, but we know that it's very easy sometimes to access to this kind of information. So this is something that I would like also to discuss and to understand if you have any idea how this data can be more protected regarding the cyber security topic. So thank you
Thank you very much,
for
Catherine. It was an excellent point. Thank you very much. Paul, you want to make some comment or question, please?
Actually, I have a lot of questions, but I'll try to
Yes, I know,
summarize
I know.
and be very objective because it's a privilege to have Teresa here. So the first comment I want to say is that obviously I'm completely agree with all that Antonio and Teresa mentioned about regulation, but I can tell you from a practical point of view of a company that has presence all around the world that we need harmonization. We don't need to reply and to have conflictual things. So, and I know that United States and the new strategy and because I'm in a group in the World Economic Forum that have sent the documentation for also for the White House because we seek for harmonization in terms of regulation. I think it's unavoidable. We need more harmonization because if you see the landscape of regulation is a crazy thing. Is scary, and if you have a presence on all around the world, you get scary too. You get scary too. The second thing, the questions, I will try to very objective. One is supply chain. So how do you think supply chain is a very complex? We can talk about supply chain hours and hours, but it's so complex. How do you think we should address supply chain in terms of? I would say I will not talk about technical issues, but how do we strategic should approach to supply chain? And the second question is about geopolitical. And I'm sorry for trying to, because I'm not a political guy. I don't have even the positions to discuss this kind of things public, but I will try to summarize. So what do you think about big companies like, I don't know, Elon Musk, Satellites, being a decision of the owners of those companies to deliver some kind of infrastructure and change the course of a war, for instance? I know that in the past, if we go back to Henry Ford and in the First World War, he also produced cars that helped the army. But this nowadays is different. It's completely different. When you use technology like this, is on the decision of private companies, not states, not governments, you can really change the course of a war. So for me, it's concerning. The other thing is that if you consider that, I don't know the real figures, but more than 1/3 of the planet doesn't have yet accessed once to internet, and they will do someday, and they start to buy cheap technology because it will be economical more advantage for them. Technology that maybe we cannot control. Cannot this also have implications in the geopolitical landscape? That are the questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Teresa, and then Antonio, and thank you very much. Okay, we will conclude with these two topics that you are going to answer. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Sure. So, okay, so I'll start with the first one on protecting the labs and neuroscience data. So my thought process on that, without getting too long-winded and going on too long, is to assume that nation states and kind of unscrupulous operatives are going to want that data. And so if you assume that every day there's the possibility the data could be accessed and in the wrong hands, what are the things that you want to do to protect that data, but still be able to collaborate and still be able to use the data? A couple of things that come to mind for me there are data encryption strategies, but also tokenization strategies. So not just is this user authorized or the system authorized to access this data, but in that moment that we decide yes, and we provide access, do we make it the least amount possible? And do we then say, but the next ask, we don't trust it, and we make them re-authenticate again? So sort of that tokenization and least privilege and least amount of access possible while still being productive. And only you are going to know what that is, kind of case by case by case. But those can be some ways to safeguard. One strategy that, because I come from the financial services industry before I worked at the White House. And one of the things we used to do is create fake companies, fake customers, put fake data there, make them decoys. And if we saw that those decoys were being accessed, we knew if we had an insider threat issue or an external threat issue so that we could address it. And so perhaps in your lab, you may want to actually have basically have made up research where you're seeding these decoys, so that you can kind of learn who's attacking the decoys and learn from that. So that's just real high level. I could probably talk with you for a couple hours about different protection strategies there. And then kind of moving to supply chain next. Supply chain is so hard, right? Because it's very complicated, it's global. We see supply chain attacks like Kaseya, SolarWinds, and we saw what that has done to now Okta with the issues that they've had. They're part of a supply chain as well for authentication. And so I always say to people, one of the strategies we deployed when I worked at the White House for President George W. Bush is I would call it zones of no trust and no trust and always verify. So this is, before zero trust kind of became the buzzword. And, so basically we would say, just because you work at the White House and serve a function doesn't mean I trust you to access everything at the White House. And so we would operate, even in a supply chain kind of way, we would operate in that way where each thing was its own entity. And each moment within that supply chain of the White House, whether it was flowers coming to the White House flower shop or chicken breasts being delivered from grocery that was going to be on the table with the president and, somebody visiting from Portugal. So all of those things we treated with sort of this no trust and always verify when we thought about the supply chain. The other thing I would say, and I think artificial intelligence really can help us with this, is a constant assessment and attestation that certain bare minimum standards, those compliance checklists again, are being adhered to and followed. And even as it relates to generative AI, I've been advising governments and the companies that we work with to just put out to all third-party vendors in their supply chain, can you please produce for us your employee policy around generative AI and whether or not they're allowed to use our data in generative AI and send us the policy. And it's been interesting to see what gets returned from different parties in the supply chain. So those kind of self-attestation letters asking for policies can be a great place to get started, because you can't audit everybody, you can't visit everybody, you can't pay a third party to review everybody. And so sometimes the simplest level can actually net you some really good results. And then the last question around geopolitical and sort of the technology that's really in the hands of private sector enterprises, in billionaires, if you will, and private sector enterprises, and how those technologies, whether it's in war or even whether it's kind of for other purposes geopolitically, could be used. And this is a tough one because, right, you saw when Ukraine got unplugged, Elon Musk said, I'm going to make Starlink available. And then they saw Ukraine wanted to use Starlink to launch drone attacks. And he said, wait a minute, we don't want to be in the middle of a war. So now it's not going to be available. And you're sort of seeing the same thing play out in the Hamas-Israeli war as well. And, I think, what I have to say about that is, it's kind of interesting because I'm a big Marvel fan. So comic books, Tony Stark, Iron Man. And if you think about like Tony Stark and Stark Enterprises, right? So those, they were kind of, and it's interesting to see kind of the comic book come to life in some of these larger than life billionaires who have technology, who have funding, who are making these, these calls in these moments, and they're not elected officials. They're not generals of armies. They're private sector individuals. So on that, I'm not even really sure. I think we're sort of entering this new time where, international treaties and accords and and decades, actually even centuries of protocol, we're kind of entering into this time where it's like, those all need to be updated, because somebody, whether it's Elon Musk or even potentially, Bill Gates, or people buying up land or investing in technology, could actually impact elections, social issues, access to technology, and yes, wars. I don't have an easy answer for you there, but it definitely is something that needs to be discussed. And I don't know if it's an international conversation. It probably needs to be. Maybe this is something where the UN, NATO, or the World Economic Forum should be putting out a thought leadership paper on this.
Okay, Teresa, perfect. And thank you very much again for your participation. Now, Antonio, please.
Yeah, Jaime, I'm not going to answer about the neuroscience because the lady that put the question.
She left already? Okay, sorry, I didn't
Although
know. Okay.
there's a technology that already out there developed by a Coimbra-based company that uses blockchain technology to secure genome.
Okay, genome. Yes. Okay. Very good. Very good. I will put it.
As far as supply chain is concerned, what I think, and I arrived a little bit late, 3 minutes late to this meeting. I was in a meeting with US officials in another room where we were going through NIST framework, the new NIST framework that is coming out. And what we claim is that not only technical controls should be there, but also other types of controls that are more geopolitical type of controls rather than just technical controls when you want to secure supply chain. You have to check if the country from which the companies are coming from stick to some democratic values and the democratic way of ruling, of running the society. I think if we are going to buy goods that are essential for the way we live from countries that use infants to develop the things, or they don't have some kind of checks and balances in the society, we should not buy from them. But at least that's in broad terms what I think. And very recently, Portugal has issued a deliberation as far as 5G is concerned that is public and addresses precisely and specifically this issue. Of course, there are economic people in the country that don't see beyond the euros and they criticize those that took that decision. But I think we don't want to be in a situation where we were in the beginning of 2020, where we were all dependent from a country in the world to produce masks, and a very simple thing that would prevent us from getting the disease, and ventilators that are a little bit more sophisticated, but neither US nor Europe was able to produce such a thing because they were coming out all from one single country. So we have to think about it, and so, above all, do not forget what we lived in 2020, and 2020 just 3 years ago. As far as geopolitics is concerned, Paulo, I think quite honestly this is a non-problem, because in all of the world, all of the history of the world, those that produced a disruptive technology could always shift the path of the war. Now we have Elon Musk's that like to be noticed, that they are not predictable, for the good and for the best, for the good and for the worst. And of course, I agree with Teresa that we have to take that into account, because there are worldwide tech companies that are much more powerful than some countries in the world. But technology as always, a disruptive technology has always changed the course of a war, has always changed the course of, look at what happened in Japan when 2 atomic bombs were dropped, when Second World War stopped. So I think this is worth discussing, but I think the fundamentals are not a new problem. It is a non-problem. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, it's 6:15. I think it's time to close. Teresa, thank you very much for being with us. We hope that you come to Portugal very soon. Okay, it's a pleasure to receive you here. Thank you very much, Antonio, for your disponibility. Thank you very much, Paulo, and all the others that were in the question. I hope you will enjoy this discussion, and then we'll be on the other discussions later on. Thank you very much. Okay, have a nice weekend, and we'll be soon. Ciao, Teresa. Bye bye. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Okay, it was a great pleasure. Bye bye. Thank you.